6:05 p.m., February 1st, 2022. This is the Public Facilities, Arts, and Culture Committee meeting. All right, going to go through the roster real quick.
That's all I can think about.
Myself, Councilmember Bradford is here. I see Councilmember Hager, Councilmember Hurt is here, Councilmember Nash, Councilmember Syracuse, Vice Chair Van Reese is here.
Jeff, you got my seat, man, but that's all right.
No, come on.
Right.
No, I'm not going to do that. Come on. Sure?
I'm good.
All right. Here.
Are we done playing musical chairs?
Sorry,
All right. So we've got two bills that are on consent. That is RS 2022-1361, Allen and Bradford. It approves an application for a major cultural institution grant from the Tennessee Arts Commission to the Metro Arts Commission to provide general operating support. We do have a letter to approve from Councilmember Allen. And then RS 2022-1364, Syracuse, Hancock, Bradford, and others, improves an intergovernmental agreement to allow Nashville Public Library to assume the Nashville Education, Community, and Arts Television Corporation's responsibilities for operating and programming the Metro-owned cable channels for art, education, and public community. Do either of those need to come off consent?
I have a question about one of them.
We gotta have a motion first.
Some of
Second.
There's a question about 1364.
Yeah, let's take it.
Okay, go ahead.
Take that off
I
consent.
was curious why the change?
Yeah. Is this just to take it off consent?
I can speak to this.
I'm sorry.
So first, right, Mr. Chair, we're just taking 1364 off consent. Now you need to move your consent agenda,
Okay.
right?
That works.
So now we'll take it up separately.
All right, so move the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay.
I guess that was a point of order, sorry.
Order of point.
All right, so we just have the one bill on consent, RS 2022-1361. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 6 in favor, none against. RS 2022-1362, Johnson, Gamble, Allen, Bradford, and Welsh appropriates $1,046,000 or $1 million American Rescue Plan Act funds from fund number 30216 to provide rent relief to vendors at the Nashville Flea Market. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And discussion.
Do we have the sponsor here?
No, but we talked
We
about
do have- we do
it
have,
in budget, and Ms. Womack is
We do
here,
have fair,
and so is the board chair of the fair board.
And how'd y'all vote on that?
We voted, we passed it. And it was quite a robust conversation, similarly to what was done with the Nashville farmers market and what they're doing to try to help give some relief to those vendors. It's basically just what it says it is, but if Ms. Womack wants to give a little bit more clarification, I think it'll be appropriate.
I have a question that will probably allow her an opportunity to explain this. I remember when we were discussing using CARES Act for the farmers market, I, along with others, were kind of concerned that with this being a Metro-owned and revenue-generating facility, that if we're doing this, are we not just paying ourselves with this
Right.
money? How are y'all intending to use this funding, and does it not constitute basically we're giving ourselves this money?
That was the same question that Councilman Vercher asked, but go ahead.
That's correct. Hi, everyone. Laura Womack. So yes, this program is designed to provide rent relief up to 8 months, depending on a dealer's status with us for rent relief. They have struggled. We were closed for 14 months, and we just fully reopened in October. Many of them had to go find other opportunities. They lost their business. Our dealer percentage is down 65-70%. This last month it was down 80%. It's been really devastating for our vendors because they relied on that for supplementing their fixed incomes, or with some people it was their sole source of income. We have supported an average of 500 small businesses every single month. So while the money will not be going to their hands directly, we will use it to subsidize and essentially provide free rent for them so that they can take that savings and invest it back into their small business so that they can return to earn income again at our monthly flea market.
How many vendors are you talking about?
So pre-pandemic, we were averaging 500 per month. These days, we are averaging about maybe 120 a month, so it's a pretty significant decline.
So excuse me for my tardiness, Chair. With this rent relief, how, is it an internal application process? Or do you just handpick people, or how do you know who's gonna need the relief and who receives it?
So we have 3 categories of dealers on how we set it up. We've got a permanent dealer, which was someone that had established this classification by renting 8 consecutive months out of the year. So it is a group of people that have that classification as part of their attendance at the flea market. We have non-permanent dealers, which will get a tier lower in support, 2 booths free up to 4 months. That is for anyone who has rented for less than 8 months out of the year. And then, of course, we wanted to target and incentivize new dealers to participate in the market. And so we, again, we're gonna offer a 3rd tier of funding of 2 free booths, or 1 free booth for 2 months. So we wanted to, kind of hit all different groups of people. We're gonna do a really robust recruiting effort with a very clear intention for diversity, to diversify our market. It was really important to us and important to the ARP committee that we talked about this proposal to. So, we expect to have an application process through Pathway Lending that was similar to how the farmers applied, or the vendors applied to the farmers market. There are certain qualifications that we're aware of. Vendors who had already applied and received PPP loans will be ineligible for this program. But I think that's the only eligibility requirement that I'm aware of that would maybe disqualify someone from the funding. So we will be utilizing Pathway Lending to help with that application process. And then we will do the administration of vetting which category the vendors fit into and what level of support they get from the rent relief program.
If I can just encourage you to reach out to Metro Arts, to Porter Flea, to the Arts and Business Council, to see if we can get some of the artists that have been participating in other types of markets to try this market, because they may feel as though that's not about what they do, but I think that it could really bring some new energy to the flea market if we can get them there.
We absolutely will, and we have Porter Flea at the fairgrounds now, which
Yeah.
we were very lucky to recruit that new
It was a
event,
great
so
show, so
we're happy to
letting
do
some
that.
of those folks know that they could have a booth, I think would be a lot of really good new energy.
All right, Councilmember Nash, you had a question?
Yes, you noted, obviously, a significant drop-off in vendors, but in the last few months, have you seen any trends, maybe where they're starting to come back now?
Unfortunately, no.
No,
This
okay.
is a tough time of year for us too. Traditionally, our vendor count decreases this time of year because of the weather. As you can imagine, a lot of people take off during the holidays, so it is a typical low time of year for us. We usually March, April, May are huge months for us. So it would be a huge incentive to get this program up and running administratively prior to the April flea market, because that is our historically largest market. And, everybody wants to kind of get back out in the spring, and it's beautiful and gets everybody revved up for the nice warm weather. And our foot traffic that is not declining at the same rate as our vendor population, but as you can imagine, I fear that will start dropping off pretty significantly, because they come and they see such a decline in the number of vendors and in the type of merchandise that's offered. And so, my fear is that they'll stop coming. And so we've got to invest in our dealers up front, and then the customers will come.
When would you typically get a sense of what your vendor population is gonna be for like April? Is it a month ahead, 2 months ahead?
Well, we're preparing a survey now so that we can reach out to all of the vendors who have not rented from us since we reopened, and our old vendor database so that we can gauge why they didn't return and notify them of this opportunity if it's approved, and then start there. At least we'll get an initial interest. And like I said, we know that we're gonna have to do a lot of work in recruiting new people and getting the word out from a marketing perspective that we're open for business.
So, back to the question that our chair asked, what would be the difference if you waived the rent for the vendors as opposed to getting the money to pay them?
That's actually what the program is. We will be waiving rent for them. So again, the money will be coming from Pathway Lending to us to administer. So if a vendor comes to us and does the application and say they're a permanent vendor, and they typically rent 5 booths, what we will do administratively is waive rent for 3 of the booths for up to 8 months, and then that value of that rent waiver will come to the fairgrounds.
Right, but the money that we are giving here will be paying you for.
It will.
So it's not really waiving because you're gonna be getting paid for it.
It'll waive it for the vendors because there will be no cash outlay from them if they choose to limit their booth rentals to what is being offered.
Right, so does that mean it comes back that we're paying ourselves when we use this funding?
Let me add something. If you think about it in terms of the vendors, these are vendors that don't have the money to pay for their rent. So they have a choice. They pay for their rent or they pay for materials to create what it is they sell. So they're backed in a corner. We can't afford at the fairgrounds, because of the drastic decline in business that we've had over the last 15, 16, 17 months, we can't afford to just give them a waiver. And this is the only way that we can help them so that they can start recouping their business and get things turned around.
So again, you're really helping you because the money is coming back to the flea market.
I think it's helping everybody, Sharon.
Well, yeah, but you know, my sore thumb in all of this is
Yeah.
Pathway Lending.
Right.
Because they are the ones that's gonna be distributing and they're gonna be getting an administrative fee for that, as they are gonna be using the funds that are gonna go to other small businesses. And so it seems to me that they're the ones that's gonna be getting off very well. And I gave you all some statistics in regards to how they have benefited from this. So I'm just saying that if, you're gonna waive the vendors, then why could we not just give you the money from American Rescue Plan in order for you to get what you need that you have lost from your vendors, and you push out the middleman and the funds that they are getting, you won't have to.
So just to eliminate Pathway Lending from the equation.
Right. If it's gonna be coming directly to you anyway.
It is, but it's not what the ARP recommended, so you'd have to go back to that committee.
Well, yeah, that may be because nobody asked a question to the ARP committee.
And also, if we did it that way, we would be responsible for the application and making sure that they're approved and they are following the guidelines. We don't have that expertise, whereas Pathway Lending does.
For the eligibility of the vendors to receive the
And
funding.
I'm thinking too, as a vendor, I don't want a grant that I have to kind of keep up with. I don't want to have to lay out and then get repaid. That's not, so I can understand as a vendor how you just like, give me 2 free months and after when I buy 3 or whatever the deal is. And then if I qualify based on the research, then that's what you're saying is that the fee that the Pathway would be getting is for a service to do that process.
No, I'm just saying, well, if you can waive it, you have the authority to waive the rent. Just like I know the airport waived the rent for some of their vendors in the airport. Or just like I have waived rent from someone who's renting a home that I have.
I think, I'm sorry, to interrupt. I think the difference is that these vendors fluctuate, so it's not like there's a set of 500 vendors that always, they may come 2 months or 4 months or 3 months, so try to qualify if they were, because I hear what you're saying, it's making sense, except for that it's not like there's X amount of vendors and we're gonna waive all your fee. There could be some vendors that don't qualify for it and some vendors that very first time coming, that's the incentive.
Well, I got the understanding that it was for those consistent vendors who, they said they had 500 and now they've got 100 and what, 20,
But it's also for
26,
new
25,
vendors.
26?
It's to encourage new vendors as
Right.
well. And so there are several tiers where that can come into play. My understanding, when we were at the ARP meeting and this came up, was that the reason that they brought Pathway Lending in was strictly because of the accountability piece. And it's federal, and you have to jump through bunches and bunches of hoops. And I know the fairground staff, as Satrice said, they don't have the ability, the knowledge, or the time bandwidth in order to manage everything, all the paperwork and all the documentation, and that's why they brought Pathway Lending in. Am I wrong?
No, I get that. I get that. I understand. We're going to always have a rationale and justification for the things that we want to do. So I get that, and I'm not necessarily saying that we are not to be holding people accountable and we shouldn't utilize that. But again, if there's some other way that you can accomplish the same thing without having to give out as much money, then why not do it?
Well, we also talked yesterday about bringing in partners with Pathway Lending, other businesses that would have an opportunity in the future.
Right.
And they can learn from Pathway and they can partner with them.
Right, I mentioned that part too, and I think that is still something that should be done. But if we can save some money here, regardless of who the administrators would be, I think if we can save that and we're able to utilize $250,000 to do something else for some other worthy cause, it's worth, I guess, exploring. So I move that we defer on this one.
All right, we have a deferral motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Can I ask another question?
We are on the deferral motion. So all those in favor of deferral, say aye.
I'd like to speak on.
Discussion on
Discussion on deferral?
I would like to speak against it. I understand where Council Lady Hurt's coming from, but what I'm hearing is we've got to get things up and running and get out to these vendors so we can kind of hopefully boost the April participation. I've also heard that the staff at the fairgrounds is just not big enough and have the expertise to do all the paperwork. So we've got to have somebody like Pathway Lending. And I think there's a little bit of urgency here, if I'm hearing, so I speak against the motion to defer.
Well, so to that, since we're discussing, because, a lot of money's come through us. And we've given $15 million for a parking lot. So now that we're talking about something that seems to be much more worthy of this type of funding at this particular point, can we really, how much money have we given out from the ARP money, and where has it gone? Can we really say where it's gone? We know a lot of it has gone to police, gone to fleets and vehicles and tasers and things of that nature. But again, if this was one of those very pressing needs, then they should have come early and not for those others. I'm just thinking about everything that's going on.
I'm gonna respectfully disagree with you. This is supporting small business.
Oh, I know, and I want to support
And
small business.
That's your jam, man. So I think that you've made a very clear point in regard to how we need to make sure and diversify our vendors in regard to distributing the services that Pathway is doing, and I think that's been heard, and people are gonna be working on that. But I'm concerned about the spring, and because of the timeliness of making sure that these vendors have a chance to make some money in the spring, I'm gonna disagree.
But does
with
this
your
stop
deferral.
them from being able to go to the flea market and operate? If they don't,
Evidently it has, because they're not coming now.
But again, if they waive their fees and tell them that they can come.
I want to recognize Councilmember Hager.
Can I ask where this $1,046,000 came from? How was that figured out or requested to begin with?
So what we did was we took the average monthly average of vendors pre-pandemic levels.
What
We
was that, the
utilized that.
500 or the
It's
120?
500. Approximately 80% of those are permanent vendors, so we did that calculation of what the average booth cost was. And so it comes out to be about $2,400 for each permanent vendor. And then it goes down from there to like $1,200 and then $200 for new vendors.
And then
So
what
it
happens
again
if-
is a tiered
And then
program.
what happens if there's any money left over?
So that's what I was gonna clarify. Any money that is not utilized by our vendors within 12 months is returned to the ARP fund. And Pathways fee is also dependent on what money is expended. So at most, it would be 5%, which is $52,000 or less if that, all the money is, the whole $1,046,000 is not expended. That money will be returned to the fund.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and vote on the deferral motion. Those in favor of deferral say aye.
Aye.
Those against?
No.
No.
All right, and I'm going to abstain on that one. All right. Any more discussion on the bill?
Let me just say, I am clearly for small business, and I have been for the past 6 years. So this is really not about small businesses, but it's about us continuously giving money where it's top heavy for certain organizations or corporations or businesses. And I think we also have to be mindful of that and make sure that it's not continuously given, because we've done the same thing with the Barnes Fund. And if you look at it, the money is going to the same organizations. So that's the reason why, and I thought it was worthy of a discussion.
Chair, can I chime in for just a second? I just want to wrap up, because I'm assuming you're going to vote. I just want to wrap up with a couple of thoughts. We at the fairgrounds consider our neighbors, our vendors, our staff, their family. And in these horrible times that people have lost everything, we've had vendors whose family members have died from COVID, and they've lost everything, and they're one step away from being unhoused. And so we feel it's our responsibility to do whatever we can within our cumulative power to be able to help these folks and give them a hand up. And we thought that this was the best way for us to be able to offer help to the people that have supported this entity for the last 2 decades, if not longer in some cases. And so this is an opportunity for us to give back in the only way we can that's the most meaningful. And we would appreciate your support.
Well, with that, we will go ahead, since the bill has been moved and seconded. Those in favor?
Aye.
All right, all right, and any against? All right, that is 6-4, none against. Moving on next to RS 2022-1364, Syracuse, Hancock, Bradford, and others. This was pulled from consent in order for discussion. Councilmember Syracuse, would you like to?
Move approval.
All right.
Second. We lost Mr. Oliver, but you can explain it.
We good? Thank you, Chair. I've been involved in NECAT for many years. Last term, I even helped them with some of their copyright compliance issues, ensuring that their producers were clearing the works appropriately and whatnot. So I've stayed engaged with NECAT, and historically, NECAT has always been under the IT department, because back when the NECATs of the world were created, it was more about the complexity of the delivery of the content, as opposed to, say, 30 plus years now. It's become more and more about the quality of the content. And so it has been a needed thing for a while, I think, that NECAT fall under a different department that could kind of cultivate the quality of the content. Obviously, IT is pervasive everywhere. They support every department and agency or whatnot. So this conversation has been going on for quite some time. And Nashville Public Library is the one who stepped up and said, hey, we've got the capacity to be able to help cultivate that. IT doesn't go anywhere as far as their support for, the departments and the content or whatnot. And so this has been a multi-month process of engaging the NECAT board, IT, and the library. I've been in their not community meetings, their board meetings, talking about this. And so it's been a very thoughtful piece of legislation here put forth to basically turn over NECAT from IT over to Nashville Library. And so Sean Lund Brandomir from their board is here if we have questions specifically, and Chris Singleton from ITS is here. And Ken Oliver, I guess, had to leave, but he was here.
Into another meeting.
He probably had to go to another meeting, so he's here also. So it's been, like I say, a very robust conversation. So if you had any specific questions for either of them, they're here to talk about it, but I'm here to support this.
Before I go to questions, I'll just add my comments. I kind of agree. It seems like it makes sense for this entity, with everything public libraries already does, especially with the downtown branch, or some of their sound and recording type activities for after school and whatnot. It sounds like it's a perfect fit to be housed in the libraries. And with that, I'll recognize questions.
Awesome. I have a couple of questions. Will the studio still stay at State, or is all that equipment moving to another place?
So the studio was about to be moved in our first term to District 9. Unbeknownst to then Councilmember Bill Pridemore.
Yeah, I didn't know.
And that's because the lease that NECAT currently has with Nashville State over off of White Bridge Road was about to expire, but they had one more extension. And so in getting involved in those discussions, I asked if NECAT specifically, is that really where you want to go? Is that your strategic, that you're going to be basically put into a metro building, and it was going to be in the where is it, Metro, the Madison Hermitage Precinct location, where also the
My Drive?
we're also the MTA. Yes, they were going to be tucked in there.
That's weird.
It was not part of the strategic needs of
Over by the crime lab?
Yes. Ultimately, strategically, NECAT wants to have road frontage. They want to be better seen or whatnot. Even when you go on Nashville State campus, it's difficult to find them.
It is.
They have an extension through 2024, and I'll make it clear that I've actually been trying to help them find a new location that, quite honestly, could be the soon-to-be Old Donaldson Library, which is right there at Briley and Lebanon Pike, central to the entire county. They have a wonderful relationship with McGavick High School, but that is a separate issue that it's not locked in by any means. But ultimately, the short answer is that they are at White Bridge until the end of 2024.
24, okay. There may be another location at the Old Memorial Hospital, just to keep that in mind if you still want to come to Madison. The other question was more of
I'll go ahead and interject real quick. Genesco's moving out of the Genesco building.
We have lots of
I love it. In other words, there's all kinds of possibilities. The other is more of a personal question. I donated one of my paintings to NCAT, so I just want to make sure that it moves with it. That's all I have to say.
I will double check that it's still in the studio. I will keep an eye on it.
All right.
Don Hildebrand used to have me do some of those lawyer shows out there at White Bridge Road.
Yep.
And people say, I saw you on TV. I said, well, if you were watching that, you were bored to death. You didn't have nothing to watch. Because it was all about law. And I said, whatever. But you're right, it's very difficult to find a studio
As
over there.
the campus has grown around it, you used to be able to drive up to the studio. We can't do that anymore because of the campus. And we work with security on accommodations for that, but it does mean we have to be thoughtful of who's coming in and booking the studio, but we try our best.
So my question is about the funds that it has taken to keep it and run under ITS, and then if Nashville Public Library is gonna do it. Is ITS going to reduce their budget, and is it going to go to Nashville Public Library, or can we look for Nashville Public Library to ask for additional funds during budget?
It's actually kind of a wash. NECAT, though, is a not-for-profit, right? So they are also charged with fundraising themselves, and Sean can speak
Sure,
to that.
I can speak to
But, yeah.
NECAT's fundraising, but not the IT library.
And then, that's a good question for Kent, as far as from a budget perspective.
Hey,
Yes.
I'm sorry I had to leave.
No, you're good, you're good. I've been there.
So I was basically asking Ken that the budget that NECAT has had, I mean, the ITS has had in order to handle this, will you all need additional funds in order for you to manage to handle the programming?
I would never tell you we would not come at some point, I mean, and potentially ask you for funds, but right now the budget is split in several different areas. The ITS budget is going to come over to us.
Okay.
And the personnel piece is the most expensive part. Then there is the cable franchise capital money that there's currently actually $1 million put aside for future capital improvements, so.
That's basically what I wanted to know, if the ITS budget was gonna
Yeah,
come over to
yeah.
you. Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions on this? All right, with that, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, with that, I declare this meeting adjourned.
Is it still gonna be called NCAT?
NECAT? Yeah.